Good evening, everyone. Please come to order. The City Council meeting for the City of Bel Air Beach, Monday, November 2nd, is now in session. We're going to do the Pledge of Allegiance, but don't rise just yet. I have two things that I want to, sadly, have to recognize and ask for a moment of silence here. Lynn Reeves informed us that a longtime resident, Mr. Jim Corrigan, passed away a little while ago. He was a long-term resident of our city, and he was instrumental in helping get the undergrounding going. And so we give our prayers to his family. And I'm going to ask that you also remember Mayor of Madeira Beach, who passed away suddenly, Maggie Black. I sat next to Maggie Black at the last meeting that we had of the big city, and she died of a heart attack, and she was a dedicated public servant. So our hearts go out to Madeira Beach and all their residents, so we just want them to know that our prayers are with them. So before we do the Pledge of Allegiance, would we please observe a moment of silence for these two fine people. Thank you. I asked two fine individuals here to do the Pledge of Allegiance for us tonight. We don't have a public ceremony for Veterans Day in our city, but November 11th is Veterans Day, and that's to honor all the individuals, men and women, who served in our military. There's a sayings out there that freedom isn't free. These are the people who paid the price. We're surrounded by a lot of veterans. I see several people I recognize here. I asked retired Commander Master Chief of the Navy John Hanzig and retired Commander Rick Schock if they would do the honors of leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance tonight. So, gentlemen.
Please join us in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you to all the veterans that are here today and have gone before us for all your sacrifice. You're what makes this possible for us in this country, our democracy. So thank you for Bel Air Beach and for all our citizens. First, we have the roll call. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Councilmember Robin Aki.
Here.
Councilmember Dave Gaddis.
Here.
Councilmember Jody Shirley.
Here.
Councilmember Rita Swope.
Here.
Vice Mayor Glenn Gunn.
Here.
Mayor Joseph Manzo.
Here.
City Manager Lynn Reeves.
Here.
City Attorney Fred Riley.
Here.
And Councilmember Marv Beam was unable to attend.
Let the record reflect that Councilmember Rita Swope is appearing by telephone. We have enough people present for a quorum. First item of business is to approve the agenda. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Jody Shirley.
Second.
Second by Dave Gaddis. Open for discussion.
I would like to, if this meeting goes beyond 2 hours, I would like to take a mask break, just to get a walk around for a couple of minutes.
Just bring it up at the time, and I'm sure there won't be an interruption. That's fine. Yep. Just so everyone knows, the voting machinery behind us, they have to try and set up tonight. I'm not going to stop anyone from speaking, but we want to move it along. They have to set up for a little election that we're having tomorrow. I had 2 points. The consent agenda has item number 5. I did have a couple of comments on that, so I'd like to bring that into the regular agenda. I promise it's going to be short. And I'm going to ask that item 10 not be considered at all tonight, only for the fact, well, 2 things. Number 1, there's no resolution that accompanies it, so I'm not quite sure what the action item is, and I don't want to put the city attorney on the spot of drafting a resolution tonight. But more importantly, tomorrow on our ballot, item number 2 actually allows us to depart from using Robert's Rules of Order in a strict manner. And our charter right now requires, and our ordinance requires, that we follow Robert's Rules of Order. Now, we don't do everything in Robert's Rules of Order, like standing for attention to get the chair's attention. That would be crazy. But the underlying cornerstone of Robert's Rules of Order is that there has to be a motion in order for there to be some type of an action by a board such as ourselves. So I think if we were to start adjusting the charter before the folks vote on it tomorrow, I think we would be premature. Fred Riley, I'm going to ask you your legal opinion on that, but I do think that at this point, we're not authorized to start departing from the charter, and particularly on something that is so critical as is a motion. A motion is the cornerstone of Roberts. So I'm going to ask your opinion on that, and then the council can consider what I'm asking for in terms of the rule of 10. We'll need a motion on that then.
You're asking for it now?
Yes, I am.
Okay. My opinion is, it's, the way your rules are set up, it has to be an item you vote on. I would agree with you that it makes sense to have the charter amendments, have a decision on that in order to go forward. I will make an overall comment about the city's rules of decorum and of the way that the meetings are run. The rules are rigid, and at times the rules are applied in a rigid manner. And the thing that is, I think, frustrating for probably citizens and also council members is that at times there's things that y'all want to talk about that you, unfortunately, due to the existing rules, you have some restrictions that are applicable that make it frustrating for things to be discussed. So I personally, this is personal opinion, not legal opinion, but personal opinion, think at times the rules are applied too strictly, and especially among the city council members. To me, it makes sense that you have some opportunity to discuss things among yourselves, although at the end of your meetings you have commissioner comments, and that's largely what that period of time is for.
I won't consider with it, but if somebody has to make, I can't make a motion, that's another thing that's on the agenda, so I'm going to ask, if there's no interest, I'll need a motion to adopt those two suggestions that I have, then we would vote on that motion, have more discussion, and if not, then we'll go forward with the agenda as it is. Do we have a motion for the two items that I made, which is to remove item 6 from the regular, item 5 from the consent agenda, move it into the regular agenda, and to remove item 10 in its entirety?
So moved.
Moved by Dave Gaddis. Second, I think, by Robin Hockey. Okay, discussion. Dave Gaddis first, and then anybody else.
As far as number 10 goes, there was a time and place for that, that it was put into place, and that's partially because of me. I really, at this time, have no consideration of moving it, so I would prefer to postpone this.
I personally would like to understand what Glenn's position is on this, because I think, we have some pretty strict rules that are applied selectively, and I would like to understand why Glenn's proposing we discuss this now, because I think there are times that it does require further discussion, and there are things that we should be discussing that maybe don't hit the agenda.
Vice Mayor?
A good question. I think it's in the interest of best practice. I mean, even if you refer to Robert's Rules of Order, you go to the back of there, and it makes allowances for smaller committees. Robert's Rules of Orders was developed basically to facilitate large bodies and meetings to maintain order and discussion and debate. This is a small body, and I don't think we need to basically govern it with the iron fist of Robert's rules. I think, so far as best practices go, I think, along with Fred there, I think we need to loosen the reins a little bit and take advantage of the times that this body comes together to meet, not only collectively as this body, the city council, but when the residents are here, because often things are deferred to a work session where some people aren't aware that it's been moved or that it's on a new agenda. They have made time in their schedules to come and attend the regular city council sessions and participate in some of those discussions and debate. It's just a best practice, I think. We don't meet enough, and I think any opportunity we have to discuss issues before this city is best served by us.
And I'm not saying that it's not a good motion. I think this is something that we do need to flesh out. Well, first off, see what the voters say tomorrow, and then flesh this out, because we're gonna have the opportunity to loosen the rules however we want. But the one thing I'm gonna ask, as long as I'm the presiding officer, and I think any presiding officer is gonna want it, is that we codify exactly what we're looking for. I don't wanna have, one person doing it one way, one person doing it another way. So I think this is something that we might wanna consider. The flip side of this coin is, I remember hour-and-a-half long discussions about, like, I think it was traffic and other things, and we couldn't vote on them at the end of it, because it was just a discussion. And that takes up a lot of the citizens' time too. I think it's better suited for a work session. So I'm not trying to kill it forever. I just think that I'm required, the charter says I shall follow Robert's Rules of Order, and our ordinance says the same. Dave Gaddis is right, he moved this thing, and I think he moved it right after we had that long discussion that one time. So I just think that, let's see what the voters say tomorrow. We're gonna have the opportunity, I intend to hold a special council work session so that we all can get our input into how we wanna run these things in the future. But I just think we might be jumping the gun a little bit tonight, no pun intended. But, if we go tonight, I think maybe just, let's see what happens tomorrow.
So then the governing guidance on this is Robert's Rules of Order? Is that what you're saying?
No,
Because as far as
Robert's-
I know, I asked the city manager if there was any enactment, resolution, or whatever that restricted us to that. So
Yeah, it's two. We actually have Charter 2.405A, which says we shall use Robert's Rule of Order. And then the 2.62 of our ordinance, which also repeats that we shall use it. Now, we have collectively agreed that we weren't going to do some of the formalities, like we're not going to stand up and address each other. That's crazy. But the motion is the cornerstone of Robert's Rules of Order. It's a deliberative body, and you have to be meeting on something, and there has to be a question. So, like, if we're just discussing something, and I'm not saying this isn't a bad thing, but if we're just discussing something, like, how do you shut it off? How do you call a question? There's no question. And I remember when we were having that long discussion that one time, I'll never forget, Jody Shirley asked, she goes, what do we do now? And I looked at her and I said, I can't do anything. There was no question. So I just don't want to have, and maybe the solution will be have discussion, but have some time limits on them too, and then refer it to a committee, to our work sessions in the future. I just think we're a day early maybe on this thing. I think tomorrow night at this time we'll know if we have this authority. I just don't want to overstep my charter grounds, if you will, or violate the charter by going against it right now on a key item like this. This isn't a little thing, so.
And so what is the fix for this, or the workaround, should the charter amendment be defeated?
Well, at least change the ordinance that we have. We have a charter that says we shall follow it. We have allowed ourselves the liberty of certain formalities. Again, the standing up. What Glenn Gunn said is correct. You're supposed to stand up, and Mr. Chairman, may I be recognized? That's insane for a group of 6 people or 7 people. But to take away the motion, you just gut Robert's Rules of Order. So my proposal, watching what you had over here, is maybe we have it like at the end of the night when we have our time to speak, but maybe there's a discussion period, but with some finite amount of time on it, not where we talk an hour and a half on something and the poor citizens are just watching us debate here. Because we can't, if we just have a discussion item, we can't do anything here. That's the only point I'm making, is we can discuss it, but ultimately it's gonna have to go to a committee anyway for a resolution or for an ordinance or something else. We can't rule on a discussion. I don't disagree with you. There are times I would like to talk about certain things, but I think we as a group have to kind of put some time limits on them too. I don't want to talk for an hour and a half on something, and meanwhile we got 10 other items that we have to do. That's just my feeling. If you want to do that, you can
No,
do it.
I think you're spot on about building a framework around it and some boundaries. But I think issues will arise when the opportunity presents itself. You need to have a discussion while issues are fresh in your mind.
And I also think we do that. I know we do it with the city manager. We often have, we're not supposed to, just so for the folks who are in the audience, we're not supposed to have back and forth questions with each other. But when the city manager speaks, there's often questions to him, and then he answers back. And I'm never going to call something on that because I think it's very productive. It's always been good. But we're not supposed to have cross-talking and everything else. If you want to follow it technically, that's what it says. But it's very productive during that time of day when somebody says, Lynn, what are you doing about such and such a project? And he answers it back. I don't want every question coming through me like that. We just talk that way. But if any of you who've attended a work session know it's a much more informal thing. We're kind of on a first-name basis. We have an opportunity to discuss things a little bit more, usually a much lesser agenda. So I'm not against it. I'm just saying maybe we have something where we don't get somebody's filibustering for an hour or something like that. I think we could do this with having a limit, but I'd really feel a lot better if the citizens, depending how the citizens, let's just leave it this way, how the citizens go tomorrow, and make this a lot easier for us. Just my point, but.
I guess I still have a question of what if the amendment gets defeated, and then we also need to research Robert's rules and see what the background is for relaxed rules? Did you just look that up?
Well, if the charter amendment does not pass, then you're really in the same situation you are today, and you will continue doing what you're doing now, which is having discussion items be brought up in a workshop. So that to me is where you're left. You always have the ability to modify the code and the manner in which the meetings are run is, a lot of it is stated in the code. So you can always change that. To the mayor's point, you have more flexibility if the amendment passes with going forward, and you have a clear mandate from the citizens if the amendment passes.
And I mean, not to be the killjoy here, but, this is Roberts, I've reproduced it, and it's the main motion, and I'm not gonna read the whole thing, I just need to read one sentence. It says an original main motion is a main motion that introduces a substantive question as a new subject. So that is if you take that out of Robert's Rules of Order, and you don't have pretty much many rules left. So the main motion is the key. I mean, I think we can have a discussion period of time, but I just don't think this is the way to do it tonight until the citizens speak, and we might be able to work around on that. I'm not going to work the will if they vote no, but I think we have some flexibility on that. Like Fred Rowley said, we already have a period where we're allowed to talk at the end, so it may just mean opening that up a little bit, maybe having a little bit of discourse during that. I think it would be useful, I really do. I'm not against it, but I think there has to be some constraints during this session. This session is to pass legislation, take action. Work session is to introduce it and see if it gets out of committee. I look at it like Congress, that's your committee, you float your idea, see what everybody thinks. We throw things out sometimes and people go, nah, it's not gonna go forward, and it never sees tonight. So when stuff comes here tonight, at least it's something that we're usually gonna act upon.
Well, with your statement and your acknowledgement that perhaps things do need to loosen up a little bit, then I've accomplished what I wanted to. Item 10.
You wanna withdraw, or do you wanna do this as
I'll leave it on.
you're gonna leave number 10 on?
So where do we go from here?
Oh, okay, well, there's a motion, we're gonna have to take a vote on the motion to remove number 10 and remove item 5. So, any other council comments?
I'm just going to try to remind everybody how this came about and why we put restrictions on ourselves. It was basically, we were not completely following Robert's rules, which I did not have a problem with. I totally entertained discussions on anything. The problem was, is citizens would show up, they'd be here, and at 10 o'clock, we would still be arguing over something that wasn't being voted on. Well, they would come to speak about a certain topic that would follow that discussion, and by the time we got to what was important to them, they gave up and went home. So to try to curb the amount of time that we were here on a regular council meeting, I introduced a supplemental resolution that reinforced Robert's rules. And personally, I think it has helped curb some of the lengthy non-voting discussions that we were having. I would say that probably the proper fix would be to have another work session. If we've got things we need to discuss, I would like to be able to give the citizens the opportunity to speak upon the topic before we do vote on it, so that we are able to consider their feelings also. But as far as just randomly having discussions, or even if we put it on the agenda, if it turns into a discussion like tonight, like this particular topic, we pretty much, I don't really have a good answer for you, Glenn. I wish I did.
No, I understand completely. My question to the city manager, was there a resolution for this?
Well, I remember Mr. Gaddis tried, but I don't think there was a resolution.
No, it was. There were 3 or 4 items on that resolution, and all of them were strict except for that one.
It's in the front of our books, actually, and it says that, in section 2, it's resolution 2019-09. It was brought by Dave Gaddis, I remember tonight well. And item 2 is what wound up one of the items that survived, and it said, item 2, I'm going to read it verbatim. It says, discussion items shall not be added to the regular agenda. It must, number 2 of that says, and any item added to the regular agenda must include an action item for council to vote on. That's exactly what you pushed, and it made it through, yes.
So I acknowledge that then, and as food for thought, I would say then a reconsideration of the resolution at a future work session with the possibility of building some framework to guide those discussions, limit those discussions so far as time frame goes and orderly conduct. And with that, I'll withdraw number 10.
Withdraw number 10, okay. Council, does anyone have a problem with his withdrawal of 10? 10 is off. And the only item that remains on the amendment would be to just move, I have a very short comment on the consent agenda, on item number 5. So if we could just move it to regular, I'll put my comments in. If the city clerk agrees with me, she'll make the change. If not, we'll move forward with that. But can we move this agenda at this point with that adjustment, bringing 5 to the regular agenda in its place? Madam Clerk, any other comments? Madam Clerk, can you do a quick roll call vote?
I have a comment.
Okay.
I would just like to point out we probably spent over 20 minutes discussing this item, which we could have, in my opinion, since something came up on item number 10. So I just want to say we've already sat here and listened to at least 20 minutes of a discussion. So I don't understand, why
We have, but item 10's been withdrawn at the
on
request
item
of the,
10.
it's been withdrawn at the request of the mover. And Patty, I can barely hear that when I'm sitting next to her. So, we have any other comments, questions? Then, Madam Clerk, will you call? So this is as adjusted. We're going to move 5 into the regular agenda. First to move item 5 into the regular agenda. A yes vote moves into the regular agenda, then we'll approve the agenda. We haven't done this in a few months, folks, so just bear with us. It's our first one since, what was it, May?
Ready?
Yes, go ahead. This is just to move item 5, okay?
Councilmember Robin Aki,
Aye.
Councilmember Dave Gaddis,
Aye.
Councilmember Jody Shirley,
Aye.
Councilmember Rita Swope,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Glenn Gunn,
Aye.
Mayor Joseph Manzo.
Aye, it passes 6-0. As amended, the new agenda, we are moving that forward. Now, any comments? Madam Clerk, please call the roll. This is to approve the overall agenda when you get moving tonight.
Councilmember Swope,
Aye.
Councilmember Shirley,
Aye.
Councilmember Gaddis,
Aye.
Councilmember Aki,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Gunn,
Aye.
Mayor Manzo.
Aye, it passes 6-0. Not to be a pain, but that's a little loud now, so if we can cut it just a bit, that'd be great. Okay, we have citizens' comments next. Folks, we were just talking about citizens' comments. It's the first time we've met for a little while. Citizens will come up over here by this podium, but in protection of Robin Aki, I'm going to ask that if you come up and wish to speak, just raise your hand, go out the door, come around, come through this door, speak, and then work the same way back to your seat. There's a code of conduct there. I'm not going to belabor it. Basically, just speak to the group as a whole here, our council as a whole, and be civil, and we're all going to get along just fine. Okay? With that, and you have 3 minutes. So would anyone like to address us? John Hansing is first.
Good evening. It's nice to see everybody again. My comments are basically directed To the Sheriff's Department, I have a
Excuse me,
question.
just put your name, please, on the record.
John Hanzik, 22nd Street. On October 23rd, my wife and I were returning home from dinner. It's around sunset. Happened to go past the traffic light, took a glance at the 12th Street parking lot. Much to my surprise, 3 deputy sheriffs' SUVs sitting in there, just sitting. And they were far enough back, in my opinion, they were not monitoring traffic. They were all in their vehicles. They were not checking cars or anything else. Now, I have an extreme appreciation and respect for law enforcement. But when we, the taxpayers, are paying the Sheriff's Department $506,000 and change this tax year, I, as a taxpayer, expect more than sitting in vehicles doing whatever. I don't see that as being law enforcement. I remember we had other residents have commented about the lack of patrols in the side streets. And I would like to start seeing some more enforcement on 22nd Street. And I'm going to make a suggestion to the Sheriff's Department. Instead of putting your marked vehicles out there with your lasers, use some unmarked vehicles and not unmarked SUVs. And I'll give you a little tip. When I used to be a resident of New York State, they would put troopers on the side of the thruway, interstates, and they were in beat-up, ramshackle vehicles, and they used radar. Don't go out there looking like a fancy unmarked vehicle. I'm getting tired of the racing again. It's been going on and on and on, and I'm fed up with it. And I can't do anything about it because I'll go to jail. I pay taxes, I expect something to be done. Last thing I want to say, and I'm sorry I'm getting a little passionate about this, but it is what it is. If you haven't voted, please exercise that right tomorrow. As you mentioned, myself, Rick, we defended that right. Don't let it pass you by. It's the one opportunity you have to exercise who governs us. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hanzig. Would anyone else like to address the council? Seeing no other hands, I'm going to close the citizen comments. Nellis County Sheriff's Department Office, I'm sorry, Sheriff. Sheriff, would you just give us your name and title, please?
Sergeant Roy Switch, Nellis County Sheriff's Office. Good evening, everybody. The UCR Part 1 crimes for the month of September, there was one theft that was taken during that time. For the entire month, there were a total of 4 people arrested within the city of Bel Air Beach, and those were for some ordinance violations and some other various crimes. There were a total of 915 events within the city of Bel Air Beach. Topping that list was 279 house checks, and then all the way down to drug calls. There was one crash in the city, and that was at, looks like 10th, 1041 Gulf Boulevard, and then 240 citations issued during the month. And that is all, if there's any questions.
Council, do we have any comments or questions for the sheriff?
I just want to make a comment. Today my kids were home because their school gave the teachers the day off, so my mom was watching the kids, and I believe it was the code enforcement officer saw my son outside, got out of his car and started playing baseball with him for like 5 minutes, which meant the world to my son, having the sheriff play with him. So I just want to say thank you for that. That meant a lot to us, and for all your officers for being friendly and waving to my kids every time they go by. So I really appreciate that personal contact. So please pass that on for me.
I
Thank
will
you.
pass that along to him.
I've got a question.
Sure, Vice Mayor.
Looking at page 2 under felonies, carry concealed firearm, and especially the last one, use firearm, weapon during an offense, what was that all about?
That one, actually, I was working that evening, and that was nothing, I don't want to say nothing more, but what that was is the driver of the vehicle was stopped. I don't know the exact violation, but it was initiated on the bridge. The stop resulted right here in front of City Hall, and one of the passengers inside the vehicle, there was 4 total, was carrying a concealed firearm. During that commission of that crime, he was in possession of narcotics. So the underlying crime, while carrying a concealed firearm, was the possession of the narcotics.
Sergeant, I have 2 things for you, good news and bad news, and I'll start with the good news. I also want to commend the code enforcement officer, Danny Doherty. I saw this one with my own eyes and I couldn't believe it. We have had a house on the corner of 7th Street and Gulf Boulevard that for years has been horrendously overgrown. I mean, it's so bad, you couldn't even see the light at night. It had blocked everything out with the overgrowth. I watched Deputy Doherty work with the owner, and in a very, I didn't hear the conversation, I could just tell by the body language, it was just done in a cordial and professional manner. If you go by that house today, that house looks so good. It has opened up the light on the street. It's an example of how to enforce code without being heavy-handed and the professionalism. Excellent job, and I saw it, and I wanted to let him know, and I want to let the sheriff and everyone in the department know that he did an outstanding job.
I'll pass it on.
Now for the one that I don't want to have to do, and this is something I've spoken about last month, we spoke about it at work session, and I just want to let you know so that the word continues to get out. We have an ongoing protest at 6th Avenue, 6th Street, and Gulf Boulevard every day. It's been going since July 21st. Talked about it at least 3 times. Sheriff Gualtieri is aware of it. Sheriff, Captain Mike Liner was instructed to call me. I confirmed with the city manager that he asked that on October 22nd. I actually had to call Sheriff Gualtieri to get that return phone call. It's not good. What's even worse is that there's no enforcement. Okay, day after day, people go by beeping horns for an hour to an hour and a half. That's against state law, it's against our law. We said we were going to give it to election day, which is tomorrow. What's really grating is I happened to be walking by, coming back from walking on the beach one morning, and the person who heads this thing looked at me and yelled out to me, and I couldn't hear him over the horns, but he looked out to me and he said, "I like the sound of horns." Okay? He likes the sound of horns, so I don't know. It's against our ordinance. So I've called in multiple times to the sheriff, I don't even think they respond. It's not going to go away. I'm going to ask the city attorney at this point. I'm looking at that contract very carefully, and please be ready to discuss it at some point in time. It says that the sheriff shall enforce our laws. And if we can't handle 2 78-year-old protesters that are causing mayhem for 3-4 months running, I got some questions for Sheriff Gualtieri, whose sign I have in front of my house right now. So please, I'm just asking that you consider this. This will come up at our work session if it doesn't stop after tomorrow. Okay, so I'm letting you know that our next work session, I'm going to expect someone from the sheriff to be here to speak on this issue if it's still going. Okay?
Okay, I will pass that information
Thank you.
along to Captain Liner.
And Sheriff Gualtieri also. He
Well,
knows
I'll
that.
pass it along to Captain Liner.
Thank you. Okay.
I'd like to add
Sure.
to that is, I think the statement that the sheriff is responsible for enforcement, there's some more to that description, I think. I think it gives him some discretion, not just total heavy-handed enforcement of everything. It's an officer's call.
On whether he's going to issue a summons, not whether he's going to stop the hundreds of violators. When asked by the city manager and...
Okay, well, I'm just saying, there's more to that sentence than just
Okay.
shall enforce it.
And that's why we're going to debate this at a work session, because if that one falls, then so does the noise ordinance, and so does the work on Sunday rule, and a whole bunch of other stuff. That's called the Equal Protection Clause. You can't say it's okay to beep horns, but it's not okay to play the electric guitar or stereo.
I'm not going to
I'm
get
just
into...
letting you know where this is
I'm
going to
not
go.
going to get into a debate
No,
on that,
that's
I'm
fine.
just saying there's more to it than that, and I would also recognize that the city manager is a point of contact with the law enforcement and the sheriff's here. I'm not quite sure where anybody picks up the phone and demands a call from...
That was demanded by Sheriff Gualtieri. He told Sheriff Liner to call me. So the sheriff, when he was here, told me. And I'm a citizen, and I pay a lot of taxes, and I'm going to call every single time I see law breaking going on in our city. That's what I swore to enforce the law. And that's what they swore to too. But we're looking the other way. So folks, if the noise ordinance means anything to you, let's enforce it, or else we can pull it off. I mean, it's fine, but you're not going to selectively enforce it. That's going to get you into a problem. I think your attorney will tell you about that when we get to work session. Sheriff, that's all I have. And I don't, hang on one second, let's see if the citizens have anything they'd like to say. Mr. Hanzig already spoke to you, but if he has anything else he'd like to add, or anyone else, please address the sheriff.
Yeah, I would like to say something. I just want to thank you for all your work. I think you guys are doing a fine job, contrary to some other comments around this evening. But I appreciate everything you guys do. And thank you for protecting my house and my neighborhood.
You're welcome, I'll pass it along to the others.
I
Citizens,
have
yes.
something to say.
Okay, wait, hang on. Let me do council, then I'm coming right back to you. Okay, Rita Sewell?
Yes, I just thank the sheriff's officers. I think you guys did an amazing job, and I know it's stressful getting direction from different people. And I fully believe in the fact that you should be able to use discretion at any time. So I just, I appreciate you guys a lot.
Thank you, ma'am.
Any other council comments before I open it up to the citizens? Ma'am?
Just speak here, go there.
Yeah, you have to kind of do it up here because it gets on the mic and then on the camera. Sure, if you want to just step slightly aside so we maintain our distancing, thank you. Close. One doorway.
Oh, I can see that, sorry. My name is Debbie Keith, I live at 109 Harbor Drive, I've lived in Bella Beach for 16 years. I think this is an amazing city, and what I wanted to say to you is I've seen these officers throughout our community helping so many different people, and Beth and Lee were really doing this to honor you guys, and they're stopping tomorrow, that's the last day.
Thank you and thank them, okay? And I support their cause, I just don't support the armed delay vote, okay?
And they didn't mean for that to happen.
Okay,
But
thank you.
they brought Bella Shore and Bella Beach together. So many times they've been coming together to stand for you guys. And thank you for what you do every day. I pray for you every day.
Thank you.
And thank you very much for that piece of information. Anyone else? June Benskoy.
Jim Van Scoy, 7th Street, Bel Air Beach. As many of you know, I have a lot of law enforcement in my family, former assistant chief of police, so forth. We totally support the sheriff. We have the best, I think, in the country, sheriff department. The whole issue has been this going outside our bedrooms since July. Okay? The Purcells didn't want to move around the city, as even the city council gave a suggestion to, as well as other people, including the police department. And when I spoke to them personally, they said it was not convenient. So if you want to keep the idea of having this fresh and to support our police as we should be always doing, why not move it from street to street in the city and keep it a fresh idea? Why not? There's been many of people that have offered to do it on their street corners for them to come there. I don't see what the resistance has been to spread it around the city, as was suggested in the work session as well from this council. So, and it's outside of our bedroom since July, every single morning. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I'm sorry. And I want to say thank you very much for all you do, all your sacrifices you make and your families make. We have no better sheriff, we have the best sheriff department in the country, in my opinion. Thank you.
Couldn't agree more. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other citizen comments? Back to council. Sheriff, I just want to say to you, I also support you, I always have. I've signed the highest contracts here, I'm trying to get more sheriff work here, and I was the only person on this council that was at the Fallen Officers Memorial last year, and I was crying for all the people that had been lost in the history of Pinellas County, so I'm 100% behind supporting people. I just don't want to make it that it inconveniences neighbors and other people like that. I think there's other ways of showing the support, like going to the Fallen Officers Memorial, okay? They didn't do it this year because of the virus, but when you see how many men and women lost their lives in service, you really appreciate the job that you do. But when I look at crime statistics and we talk about one event, I mean, I was talking to another mayor, I mean, most mayors would have killed to have that, so don't think I'm not grateful to you and the sheriff. And not only do we think we have the best sheriff in the world and the country, he is. He got voted that last year. Sheriff Bob Peltier was the best sheriff in the country. That was from his peers, so excellent job and excellent professionalism.
Again, Mayor, couldn't agree more.
Thank you. Anyone else? Sheriff, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we move on to the consent agenda. This is the approval of the October 5th, 2020 City Council meeting minutes. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
There's no discussion on this. All in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? Passes unanimously, 6-0. Item 5, now moving to the regular agenda, I'm just sliding item 5 down, which is the approval of the October 19th City Council work session minutes. I asked to move that one down. So first, can we have a motion to approve those minutes?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Discussion? Anyone? I'll say what I have to say then. The only thing I had, Madam Clerk, and you might remember this, was what we just were speaking about. On item 4, it was discussed recognition for yourselves. And I just wanted to get in either a sentence or two that I spoke at length regarding the protests and our need to address it as a city. So if we could just add those 2 sentences or something to that effect at your discretion, that's all I wanted to add to that. Otherwise, I find it fine. We would need a motion to amend that, though, from the floor if we want to do it. If not, they'll stay as is.
So moved.
Moved, and a second? No second? Okay, then we vote on it. Any further council comments? Sid?
I was just going to say, I mean, I remember we talked about that, and
Good.
it's good to clarify that there was not just 1 or 2 of us. There was a few of us that were against this.
Yeah, I think it should be in there, but we don't have a second, so I can't go forward on adjusting it. So our comments are noted for the record, and the audio will say what exactly we said. And hopefully it looks as if this problem is going to end tomorrow, so I'm appreciative of that. Okay, so then, is there any citizen comments on that? None? Back to council. To a vote to approve the October 19th City Council work session minutes. Madam Clerk?
Councilmember Shirley,
Aye.
Councilmember Swope,
Aye.
Councilmember Aki,
Aye.
Councilmember Gaddis,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Gunn,
Aye.
Mayor Manzo.
Nay. So 5-1 it passes. Meeting minutes are passed as is. Okay, we move to the item 6. A long one here. Consideration of ordinance 2004, an ordinance granting to Duke Energy Florida LLC, doing business as Duke Energy, an electric utility rights of way utilization franchise, prescribing the terms and conditions related to the occupancy of municipal streets and rights of way in the city of Bel Air Beach, Florida, for the purposes of providing electric service, providing for severability of provisions, and for providing an effective date. The description is a rights of way utilization to provide electric services. First, do I have a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Dave Gaddis,
Second.
seconded by Jody Shirley. Open for discussion, moving to Dave Gaddis.
Nope, this is a continuation of undergrounding. I'm good with that.
Mayor?
Yes.
This is the continuation of the franchise agreement. It's a 10-year franchise agreement, and Jeff Baker is here from Duke Energy if you have any questions.
I had only one question on section 6A. It's talking about a franchise fee, and I didn't have time to pull out my bill and see, but it's talking about franchise fees are going to be paid to the city but collected from the company's customers. Is this a new fee that's coming on? Is this something we already have? Is this an adjustment to our fee? Mr. Baker, you want to address us?
It is something we already have.
Okay, was my key concern. I don't want anything hidden to the taxpayers that they don't know about and we don't know about. If you just give your name too for the record.
Good evening, Jeff Baker, Duke Energy, 299 First Avenue North. The franchise fee is a fee that it has a statutory limit of 6%, which that is currently what the city is collecting and has been for many years, so it would not be a new fee whatsoever. But if you do look at your bill, you'll see a line item for the franchise fee as well as the municipal tax. That's two separate line items. But it would be the same fee that we have been receiving for many years.
I think that answers my question, and unfortunately, like I said, I couldn't look at it, but it just takes the money out of my bank account and we all stay happy, so, but I think that takes care of my question, so. Did anybody else have a question while we have Mr. Baker up here? I'll even open it up to the citizens. Glenn Gunn?
So essentially, that's just a pass-through to the customers then, I mean.
Right, but in exchange for that, it does give us some privileges. For example, we don't pay permitting fees and things of that nature. So but it's a pass-through cost that we collect on behalf of our customers and remit it to the city. And just for the council's knowledge, for 2019, I want to say we paid was it $187,000 was what the $187,000 was the fee we paid to the city for that right.
I guess it's just a nomenclature. You say we paid, but it's actually us.
The resident, yes.
That's what I meant by
Yes.
pass-through. Thank you.
Any other citizen comments? Back to the council, any other comments? Mr. Baker, thank you for giving us the explanation. I'm going to call the question at this point then. So I have to read it again. What's before us is to approve consideration of ordinance 20-04, an ordinance granting to Duke Energy Florida LLC, doing business as Duke Energy, an energy utility rights of way utilization franchise, prescribing the terms and conditions related to the occupancy of municipal streets and rights of way in the city of Bel Air Beach, Florida, for the purposes of providing electric service, providing for severability of provisions, and providing for an effective date. City Manager, I don't see, this is the first reading, right?
Yes, we have to have 2 readings, so we'll have our next one.
That's not indicated here, but this is the first reading, so everyone knows, as he's just said, there has to be 2 readings, so it'll come now, and we'll come again at our next council meeting in December. Okay, all right. Any other questions? Everybody's good with that? Madam Clerk, will you please call the question?
Councilmember Gaddis,
Aye.
Councilmember Aki,
Aye.
Councilmember Swope,
Aye.
Councilmember Shirley,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Gunn,
Aye.
Mayor Manzo.
Aye. So it passes 6-0. That's first reading. It'll be on for the second reading in December. I'm not sure the date, but the first Monday in December.
7.
Second?
7.
7th, December 7th, the day that will live in infamy. Okay. City Council, next one, 7. Item is consideration of reappointment of Planning and Zoning Board members. We have 3 people, Brenda Bonacera, Thomas Bonacera, and J.C. Emfeld. We normally don't do a motion for this because it's a reappointment. I don't think we have to do a motion, Madam Clerk. I think it's just there before us for a vote, right? Yeah.
Correct.
So, are any of these individuals here? Usually we let the individuals speak first if they wish, and then council could have questions for you, or we might discuss things amongst ourselves. No one's here? Okay. Does the council have any comments on this before we go to vote?
I have a question on the process. This is a reappointment, but my question is the process, do you advertise for new applicants, or is it just an automatic rollover?
Well, Patty, we advertise all the time for board applications,
Right.
which we don't get very many. But then we ask the members that are on it if they want to, and we bring that to council.
That's correct. We have never stopped advertising. I can't even remember how far back we have had that up there because we are unable to fill our boards and committees. So yes, it's continuous advertisement.
Patty, because this is a reappointment, can you certify, because I don't see any paperwork here, can you certify to us, I think there's a procedure that they have to I think within a month of their thing, don't quote me exactly, but like within a month of their term coming up, they have to request it. Did they make that formal request to you within the proper timeframes, and can you document it if asked?
Yeah, it's 60 days, and no, it was just verbal.
Okay,
I spoke with each one of them.
okay. Is
I would
that,
like to make a comment.
hang on one second, is that our process, verbal, or does it have to be a written?
I really can't answer that. I'd have to look it up. I mean, that's just the way we've always done it, but I can't tell you if that's the written process, so I would have to check that for you.
Would you be able to check that? It's just, if it's followed with the process, I have no problem in moving it forward. If it's not within the process, then I have a big problem, because it would be either against our charter or ordinance.
Do you have your book with you?
No, I don't.
No.
I don't think I have that piece.
I'll be back.
That's a good point.
Does anybody need a break? I mean, we're gonna need a couple minutes, right, Patty?
Pardon?
You'll need a few minutes, so we want to just take a 5-minute break, or,
Sure.
okay. Everyone wants to stand adjourned for, it's 6:50, we'll come back at 7 o'clock. That should be enough.
For a long elaborate answer, but there's no point. If there's nothing in the code that prevents you from doing that, and both of the individuals go into it with the understanding that the law requires that they not violate the sunshine law, which means they can't discuss it over dinner or over breakfast or over TV or whatever they do at home. If they discuss matters, then that's a violation of law, and there's consequences for that.
And I'll ask Lynn Reeves and Patty Gentry, to the best of your knowledge, there has never been any accusation against these individuals, correct? As far as I know, I've never heard it, right?
Correct.
Okay, all right.
Can I ask, do we have vacancies on this board? What, does this bring it to a full capacity by voting these three, or reappointing these three?
These three and item number 8 would fill the board.
There's only one position like that.
I was under the impression 8 was, for the purposes of code review, were they gonna be long-standing positions?
Mr. Draskovic had to resign from the board, and number 8 is to fill his position.
There's one position.
Gotcha.
There was one open, and then we have Mr.
If you
Jaskovic.
appointed all three of these, the next thing you would vote on is 2 individuals, you would select one of them.
One of the 2, okay. Okay. Councilman Shirley, does that take care of your question?
It does.
Any other council comments before we go to the vote? So you can vote up to 3, you do not have to vote for 3, you can vote for 0, 1, 2, or 3. This is a paper ballot, we will give it to Patty Gentry, she will collect them from us. So if everyone would please select their ballots and please place your signature and print your name.
Council members vote. Council members, okay. You're off speaker, and I'm ready to take your vote. Okay, and, okay. Thank you. I'm putting you back on speaker. Thank you. Councilmember Aki voted for Brenda Buenasera, Thomas Buenasera, and J.C. Imfeld. Councilmember Gaddis voted for Brenda Buenasera and J.C. Imfeld. Vice Mayor Gunn voted no for Brenda Buenasera, Thomas Buenasera, and J.C. Imfeld.
I'm sorry, does that mean that no votes at all?
Correct,
Okay.
but he voted, but, right, not for reappointment. Mayor Manzo voted for Brenda Buenasera, Thomas Buenasera, and J.C. Imfeld. Councilmember Shirley voted for Brenda Buenasera and Thomas Buenasera. And Councilmember Swope voted for Brenda Buenasera and J.C. Imfeld.
And, Lynn, usually you keep these with me, but I think I have 5 votes for Brenda Buenasera, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, I have, that's what she is on the board, because you need 4. Thomas, I have 3 votes for Thomas.
That's correct.
So he fails, he does not get on the board. And J.C. Imfeld, I have 4 for J.C. Imfeld.
Correct.
So J.C. Imfeld and Brenda Buenasera are on the board, and Mr. Thomas Buenasera is not.
Correct.
Okay. Okay, so now we move on to item 8, new item, consideration of appointment to the Planning and Zoning Board. This is one position, it looks like, am I correct, right? It's one position?
Yes.
Oh, you would vote for 2 now.
Now we're voting for 2, okay. So we have 2 people who are up here, Angela Cordell Berry and Wanda Schwer. I see
Mayor?
Wanda, yes,
Ms. Berry is in a meeting in Sarasota, and Ms. Schwer is volunteering. Is she here?
right here.
Oh, she wasn't sure she'd make it. I couldn't see
Can't
her.
tell behind the mask
Thank you.
there, but yes, she's here. So did you want to address us, Ms. Schwer?
Wanda Schwer, 517 Belle Isle Boulevard. I had applied for the code review committee that you had started to form. I thought I was uniquely qualified for that since I had previously chaired the last code review committee. And after serving on the park board previously and 8 years on council, I like serving the city. We've been here 20 years, I love the city. I like working for the city, and I would look forward to working on this particular board. Thank you.
Thank you. There's no one else who are nominees. Did anyone on council have any comments or questions? Okay, then we're going to take this to a vote. The ballot says vote up to 1, so with the consensus of council, I'll just do this as a voice vote. This will change and say vote for up to 2. Is everybody in agreement with that? All in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed?
Aye.
Okay, so it's now vote for up to 2. You can vote for 0, you can vote for 1, you can vote for 2. Please fill out your ballots and pass them, or Lynn Reeves will collect them from us.
Councilmember? Okay. And your vote is? Okay. Thank you. I'm putting you back on speaker. Thank you. Councilmember Aki voted for Ms. Berry and Ms. Schwer. Councilmember Gaddis voted for Ms. Berry. Vice Mayor Gunn voted for Ms. Berry and Ms. Schwer. Mayor Manzo voted for Ms. Berry. Councilmember Shirley voted for Ms. Berry and Ms. Schwer. And Councilmember Swope voted for Ms. Berry and Ms. Schwer.
Okay, so Lynn, will you please confirm my vote total tallies here? I have 6 votes for Angela Cordell Berry, correct?
Correct.
And so she's on count on that board. And I have 4 votes for Wanda Schwer. That would also place her on the board, correct?
Correct.
Okay, that's good. Congratulations, everyone. Thank you for serving on this. Okay, now, since you just got elected to this, we're going to give you some work. Item 9 is to assign the Planning and Zoning Board to review the city code. Now, I know, well, let's get the motion first. Can I have the motion?
So moved.
Jody Shirley motions.
Second.
Second was Robin, okay. Jody?
I think, well, it's clear we need to revisit the code review. We looked at this a couple years back. There are some items that didn't get covered because code is a pretty large task to tackle. I know that we have a draft charter here that I don't know if we're discussing that right now, but I think it's probably important to address. I noticed there are some items on here specific and maybe some additional recommendations could be made. And want to thank you for stepping up. You did a great job last time heading that up.
I wanted to thank Glenn Gunn, and I think he worked with city manager also on this, and thank you both for putting together. Councilman Shirley, I didn't think we were going to discuss this tonight. This was just placed on our desk. I haven't even had an opportunity to read it, so I'm going to say we should assign this. It's clear that we're not going to get the, at least my opinion is we're not going to get any folks stepping forward to go on a separate committee. So I think we can assign it, and I think we can button this up at the next work session and then hand it to them. I'm sure it's going to be comprehensive. We might have a few little changes, but if you follow, I'm sure you did the procedures in the past, we probably have enough to charge them to get this done.
I think that was your timeline, right?
Yeah, that's, what I'm asking you to do is assign the task tonight, and then we'll find, hopefully there will be a council member that would like to be an advisor, and I've discussed this with the city attorney. This is the simplest way to do it. We'll assign them. They'll be non-voting, but they'll be at the table, and their input will be, very important. So, and if we get some other citizens that have some interest, then you can make that recommendation in December. But right now, what I'm asking you to do is assign the task, and then you've got a draft charter, and it's just some things that I've collected over the last couple of years that, I know some areas we need to work on. And if you've got some others that you think that I missed, then feel free to get them to me so I can add them to the list. But we don't want to make it 20 chapters. We want to try to keep it to half a dozen at the most. Because it is cumbersome. And some of the changes in some of the chapters that are in there, it's just minor things like, I think there's a reference of our police department somewhere. We need to strike that and fix that, things like that. So what I'm asking you tonight is to go ahead and appoint them, and then in December we'll come back, and if we have any other volunteers, we'll recommend that the council appoint them as advisors.
So December, we'll actually do the formal charge, but we'll hash this out. So we've got 2 items now for the next work session, okay? The Glenn Gunn item, I would like to see that on, along with probably, again, depending on how the vote goes, we may have a lot of stuff to discuss on that one, so that may be a session unto itself, but let's bring this one in there also. Let's get these comments if you don't mind. So that's 2 items for the next work session. If whoever's putting the list together, we got 2 already.
Yeah.
And quite frankly, that may, I mean, if we're going to start talking about like all the rules of order, that's going to be quite a night. So let's, if we have to have 2, we'll split this up into 2 work sessions. That's fine. So, do we have any other council comments? Because we can probably move this one on. Citizens, anybody want to comment on item number 9? Back to council with Jody Shirley having the last word.
Just to reiterate, then the selection of the council members that will participate, that will take place in December as well, is that the thought?
I think that this isn't an ad hoc committee, so normally on an ad hoc committee, I have to nominate, anybody who was interested, I was gonna nominate, it's not like I'm holding it back, but if anyone's interested, I guess speak up and we'll decide how many people are interested. I mean, I don't know that we have a limit, I think we were talking about 2, but depends who has the time to put in on it. It's very open to anybody. I don't even know how we're gonna vote on it, because I don't think we have a procedure for doing this, it's just join in on the team as an advisor, but you're kind of doing it with our.
Well, like you've appointed me several times as an advisor to Finance Committee or to the Communications Committee. You appointed me and Patty, so.
Right.
Things like that.
We'll just get a consensus of council on the next time, that'll be fine. And so anyone who's interested, just think about it and speak up. All right, so calling the question on item 9, this is to assign the Planning and Zoning Board to review the city code. A yes vote gets this assigned with the details to come later. Madam Clerk?
Councilmember Swope,
Aye.
Councilmember Aki,
Aye.
Councilmember Gaddis,
Aye.
Councilmember Shirley,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Gunn,
Aye.
Mayor Manzo.
Aye. So it's 6-0, and the Planning Board will now review this, but nothing to do right yet. Just wait 1 month, and we're going to give you a copy of this charter, which will have much more detail on it. And then we look forward to it. And again, thank you to everybody who's on that committee for the hard work. I know this is not an easy thing to go through. Okay, item 10 was withdrawn by Vice Mayor Gunn. We move on to item 11. Everybody's okay? It's 7:17. We're moving along here. So item 11 is consideration of resolution 2020-18, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Delaware Beach, Florida, providing for adoption of administrative policy number 15 regarding to FEMA policy number 104-008-03, February 2020, providing for incorporation of recitals, providing for the repeal of all resolutions in conflict herewith, and establishing an effective date. Will someone bring a motion, please?
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Jody Shirley, Robin Aki. Jody Shirley?
I'm going to defer to Lynn. It's pretty standard policy, I think, the FEMA.
Yeah, this is, FEMA has changed some rules and they want us to, we either had to pass administrative policy, and that's what was recommended by Florida Department of Emergency Management to do this, because it encompasses only 100 square foot. It's really just addressing accessory structures, which are sheds, and that's all we have. We don't have any mobile homes in the other policies. So based on what I got from Rebecca Quinn at the emergency management in Tallahassee, she sent back and recommended that we adopt this policy as an administrative policy. And at some point, if we need to adopt more flood regulations, then we may incorporate it into them. But just moving forward, CRS is changing some of the rules over the next few months. One of them, they're requiring a foot of freeboard, which the city doesn't require it, but the Florida Building Code does. And I hope everyone knows what I'm talking about, freeboard. It's a foot above the base flood elevation when you build your home. So there's some things that are going to change, and this is one of the things, and FEMA is allowing us to adopt it as a policy as opposed to changing the ordinance at this point. So what I'm asking you to do is adopt this policy, and we'll put it in the administrative policies.
And they're changing that. I know what freeboard is. I just built the house a few years ago, but what's the story with the elevations? I mean, it's been 2 years. Are they still talking about them here? Because the floodplain maps were supposed to change, so where are we at? At Congress?
Not any further than we were. They did send an email, I want to say, it's probably within the last 45 days, to ask us if we're open, because they're getting ready to publish the final one. There were some appeals. Of course, we didn't appeal anything because actually our elevations by the flood maps are going to drop. Now, Oldsmar got the other end of the stick, and they did some appealing. So I expect them to start advertising that final thing, and I'm guessing just March, April, the process hopefully will be over with. Because
Next year or the year after?
I think
Next year.
what happened is, because of the pandemic and everything kind of shut down, they just didn't go forward with anything.
I think they're constantly changing, and then there is new building code coming out in January too, so you're gonna need to get on your toes on that too.
Yeah, well, FEMA is, gotten to the point where we're a class 6. Well, if you don't adopt their policy, then you're a class 8. If you don't have a foot of freeboard, we follow the Florida Building Code, then we're a class 8. These are just new rules, and they haven't got clarity from the Florida Department of Emergency Management. It's not gotten clarity from FEMA. They're asking a lot of questions.
It just makes it so much more difficult when you start adding freeboard to it and then not dropping the elevation. I mean, you could wind up building the same type of foundation if they would just do it all at once, but no, they're doing it the hard way. And for somebody who's building right now, you actually wind up having to go up higher, and then they're going to change it on you, 6 months later. So
Yeah, and I've told anybody that's come in to talk to us about building, I've told them, this could change in 6 months, and the height could drop, because
that's a lot of money when you're building.
in here, in Bel Air Beach, in a lot of places, it's going to drop 2 feet.
Council, did we have any other questions for Lynn or on this proposal? I'll open it up to the city. John Hanzig.
John Hansick, 22nd Street, Bel Air Beach. I'm trying to understand this conversation when you're talking about freeboard. Is this for new construction?
Yes.
Now, what about sheds? Because I read that back here, the maximum is 100 square feet, which is the current city code anyway. So is that also implying that going forward,
No.
a shed has to be?
No, this is considered an accessory structure. What they're talking about freeboard is a residence.
Is it what?
A residence.
It's foundation for a new residence, John.
Oh, okay, okay.
We're talking about 2 different things. And this is the only thing the city of Bel Air Beach has that is authorized as an accessory structure is a shed. We don't have any, you can't have a pergola, you can't have any of that stuff.
Okay. And Mr. Mayor, if I may, a point of information, could we have council members speak directly into the microphone? I'm having difficulty hearing the conversations, and I'm sure people behind me are also having the same issue. Thank you.
I'll remind everyone, thank you, Mr. Hanzig, and that comes out on the tape. So I'm not picking on you, Dave, but I'm looking at yours, and that's not going to pick up on the tape. You have to be like 2 inches away, and I think that goes for all of us. So just almost be right on top of the mic. These are very sensitive, only when you're on top of them, so thank you. Any other citizens wish to address us on this issue? Coming back to council then, with Jody Shirley having the last word.
Nothing more.
Jody, okay. So let me call the question then. So before us is the consideration of resolution 2020-2000, sorry, let me say that right. Consideration of resolution 2020-18, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Bel Air Beach, Florida, providing for adoption of administrative policy number 15 relating to FEMA policy number 104008-03, February 2020, providing for incorporation of recitals, providing for the repeal of all resolutions in conflict herewith, and establishing an effective day. Yes vote will pass that. Madam Clerk.
Councilmember Shirley?
Aye.
Councilmember Swope?
Aye.
Councilmember Aki?
Aye.
Councilmember Gaddis?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Gunn?
Aye.
Mayor Manzo?
Aye. So it passes 6-0. Lynn, would you please let FEMA and the folks know on that? Okay, item number, that takes care of most of the regular agenda. We move into the standard items. Unfinished business. Do we have anyone with unfinished business? I have one item, and Jody, I'm gonna remind you of an item that you had brought up at the last meeting. Let me do yours first. You had brought up an issue, and it didn't get answered later on the work session, about short-term condo rentals, and you had a question about that. So I noticed it in the minutes, and I just wanted to remind you.
Thank you.
Did you want to raise that?
Yeah, I didn't know if it was addressed in the work session. I didn't see
It's not.
any comments in there, but my question was along the lines of the fact that we do not allow short-term rentals, yet most of the condos have short-term rentals. The beach is full of vacationers that are staying on Bel Air Beach. And if it's a city code, that should supersede the condo documents as far as I'm concerned. But clearly, there's some discrepancy, and this is an ongoing issue. And I know because I walk the beach, Bel Air end of the beach, every week, and it's full of vacationers, and they are all staying at the condos along the beach. So it seems we have a conflict in our code, and it's an issue.
I think the code actually permits it for the condos officially, and I know they're doing it short-term, but yet we're prohibited. I know Fred Riley, at some point, you and I were talking, months back, and I think I mentioned to you, I said, how is it that someone, my house is 2,000 square feet, let's say you have a 2,000 square foot condo, how is it that you can rent your condo, but I can't rent my house short-term? And I think that's an issue.
And I think it should just be across the board, no short-term rentals. I mean, we're a residential community, we're not to me, what happens is, if you take a residential property and all of a sudden you allow the guy next door to rent their home as an Airbnb, you've just allowed them to operate a commercial business in a residential setting. That is a residential property, and they are competing with the hotel rooms up on Clearwater Beach. It's the same thing, yet we allow it to happen on our beach. It's a problem. It's a problem, and we need to talk about it and figure, we've talked about this since the first day I was on council, and no one's done anything about it. It keeps getting pushed down the road, but we can't talk about short-term rentals. We're not talking about changing our policy on short-term rental. We're talking about enforcing it on all properties on Bel Air Beach. How do we do that? Maybe it's a subject for a work session, but it's gotta hit the work session.
I agree that, and I think so you start getting into this equal protection issue here too, because again, a 2,000 square footer is a 2,000 square footer or 1,500 or whatever, and I don't see the difference, okay? The other thing I'll add and I totally support your point, Councilwoman Shirley, as I look at the police reports and stuff, most of the action, when we have problems, it's up in the condos. We've had so many things with domestic violence and things like that don't necessarily show up in the felonies and stuff like that, but it's up there because I think, again, you're getting the short-term people and, Lord knows what else is going on with, parties and things like that, but I'm sure I'm sure the police can tell us too, the sheriff can tell us. So, Mr. Riley, I think it is a topic, but I think, again, maybe we gotta get it on the next one, because if it's been going that long, you're going on 3 years, you've waited long enough, so.
Mayor, our code that talks about short-term rentals is for residential low. It's not for residential medium. And that's what the difference is. The code that was established when, and I don't have the exact date it was established for short-term rentals, but at the time, it only applied to residential homes. Our
A single family.
single-family home, that's all it applied to. And my understanding is the condo docs have different rules for them that they've established, as far as time and things of that nature. Now, I'm not saying we couldn't look deeper into that and maybe create something separate, but, I'd warn you, don't touch that ordinance that's the short-term rental, because once you do, then your grandfather clause is gone. As far as
What I brought to the council last time was and again, I'm not saying it passes legal muster, but apparently the Indian Shores put a lot of money and a lot of lawyer time into, they also have a grandfathered short-term rental thing, and they said, how can we clean it up for some of the problems they were having? And they did have a workaround that their attorneys thought worked for them. Again, it hasn't been challenged, I don't think yet in court, but I don't know that it's nothing that, we shouldn't look at. I'm just wondering, I know you say residential low, but as I looked at it, I said, well, what's the difference, really? I mean, the square footage is the square footage, and I mean, it may even be smaller square footage there, and we're saying to a homeowner, and we don't want it, I understand, but, you can't rent, but you can rent, and you've got the same properties. I mean, hell, they may even have a bigger property, and they're allowed to rent, and I don't know.
Well, in looking
Not set ourselves
further
up.
at, is it Reddington Shores, Patty? Whatever you said.
Reddington Shores, yeah.
In looking at that further, what they attempted to do is not so much deal with the residential, they attempted to control more. Evidently, they've got a lot of high-rise condos, and, I don't know exactly. So what they did is they created zones, or they have zones. So they put stipulations. So that may be a way to look at this further, and I'll have to have some discussion with Fred on that.
Or maybe we even look at zoning and planning and go, okay, these guys are operating as hotels, maybe they are hotels, and maybe we charge them a higher tax base because they're hotels. They're operating as hotels, we're not collecting the tax as a commercial property as such. I mean, if we're gonna allow it, we may as well get the tax base for it.
Fred, I'm not looking for an answer tonight, but I think it's Jody Shirley's point.
I'll just give you a couple comments.
When you're after.
One, there's two different zoning classifications, so that in and of itself establishes a distinction between the two. And if one of them is regulated for short term and the other is not, which is my understanding, then, there's two different schemes going on. The thing that I would question with respect to the condos is when were the condos created, when were the declaration created, and what rules did they have in place, and then where in the scheme or where in the timeline did the the regulation related to short-term rentals take place. And that, it's one of those things that it's, I hate the phrase sticky wicket, but that's what it is. You have to look at a lot of different things. The document that the mayor provided us that discussed this, the changes made in another community, they went to, I would say, great lengths to try and very clearly regulate in a way that did not conflict with the statutory preemption provision. And that's essentially what they did in another community, and they increased the regulation. If that's something y'all want to consider, that probably is a really good model to start with, but I will agree with Lynn. You can make changes to it. If you're risk adverse, the safest things do nothing. And that's what you should ultimately consider, but it's one of those things, I really think you would need to look at a lot of different parts in order to adjust the Rubik's Cube and make sure you're on sound footing before you consider anything.
I think to your point, I think Indian Rocks wound up losing their grandfathering, and I think it became an absolute unmitigated disaster. So I think we want to talk about it. I mean, I'm liking a lot of what I'm hearing, but also, we're playing a little bit of a big risk here. So probably something to talk about at a work session, but I think to Councilwoman Shirley's point, I'm sorry, Glenn, you were next. You're next. You're next this time. I think we get it on the next session or as quickly as we can. I'm sorry, Glenn, go ahead.
No, it sounds like a good task for your new planning and zoning board. And what I would say to that is, yeah, this has been around for a long time and we've been kicking it down. Now, risk averse is one end of a continuum. And yeah, I don't think we're necessarily exactly there. I think we're depending on you to say, okay, this is how far you can go up to that line and not bring down the wrath of changing all that, the grandfather stuff. So I guess maybe you can tag team with the planning and zoning board and kind of give us some options here of how far can you push something like that without necessarily overstepping the probability that you're going to incur the wrath of the legislature.
Well, in response to the point you're making, I'm not telling you I'm so risk adverse, the answer is always no. That's not what I'm telling you. The statutory preemption goes to the duration and whether you can have it or not. You can't prohibit it, or but you can do other things, and that's what they did in the other city, is they regulated it in a different manner. And how successful they'll be with it, who knows? They may be a test case, you never know. But I'm just saying to you, I've looked at it enough, and Lynn and I have talked about it several times. It would pay to look at it very hard before you ever enacted anything.
I have a possibly dumb question, but since they're considered two separate entities, single home versus condos, could you have two separate whatever, so you leave the housing grandfather one alone, and then something new is created for the condos separate from the house, so you don't monkey with this? Is that a possibility? I have no idea.
It potentially is, because you're addressing a situation in a different zoning classification, whereas before you had never regulated it in any manner.
Okay, so that's potentially a possibility. Leave the housing alone so we don't mess up the grandfathering or monkey with that, and do something completely new for the condos. Is that a slight workaround?
Potentially. I don't like the phrase workaround, because
I don't really, yeah, whatever.
I understand why it's used, but
A bypass.
to me, it's too close to circumvent, and
Okay.
circumventing the law is not particularly a good thing.
Well, whatever the proper terminology is.
Well,
Again,
you
not
call it the
legal.
way it is, but I'm just, it's something that merits a lot of consideration in order to make sure you remain in the safe harbor. That's really what I'm saying.
Fair enough.
Can we bring this to the next work session so that we can get the ideas down, so that we can tell our city attorney so that he can, I do like the idea of also getting it to planning board. I mean, this is definitely in their ballpark to consider, but I think it would be helpful if, you had some incredible ideas, and I think let's get that over to them and say, okay, here's what we're trying to do. It's our Christmas list. We may not get everything on it. We may not get anything on it, but here's what we'd like to see if there is a way to make it happen. And, I understand, Fred. I mean, that's a risk. That's where we have to make the hard decisions as the council and say, do we want to, I'm not going to use the term roll the dice, but take the chance on this thing, okay? And we do it with the best lawyering we can get, which is you, and we take your advice and we go with it. Somebody may challenge it. No one may challenge it. We'll see how it goes. Or we may do nothing, so we'll see what happens. But I think it does bear addressing. If you waited 2.5 years, I think you've been patient enough. I had one other item, and Mr. Raleigh, I think you addressed it, but I didn't have a chance to read it because it came out as I was coming over here, and it was regarding this legal situation with Anna Trez, and it looks as if you have contacted their attorney, but I don't know if you need to say anything else more on it. I know you issued a memo. I didn't even see if it went to all the council or not, but that was only just, was that going to get taken care of? And it looks like it has.
I didn't issue a memo. I wrote an email that went to Lynn, Patty, and yourself, and the short version, I was going to say something about it. I wasn't going to use names, but I'll be purposely vague.
I think we used it last time, so it's fine. Yeah.
That's your choice.
Yeah.
I'll choose differently. But I spoke to her attorney, and he was unaware of any issue, and in the discussion, I told him that the tone of the voice messages that were left, and said if there's an issue that comes forward in the future, please call me and we will do our best to try and resolve it. And he agreed that that would be the way to go forward.
Wonderful. There has been no further messages since the last contact. That's all I have. Does anybody else have any unfinished business? Then we'll move over to you, Mr. Raleigh, City Attorney.
No further comments from me.
City Manager?
just a few things to let you know. I put at your place, because I got it just today, the Duke invoice for the estimate for Gulf Boulevard. That'll be coming to you in the next month. The penny for money, the mayor executed it last month, and the county executed it within the last week to 10 days, because we just got it back. So we'll be starting to accumulate some money, but the price of that is about $10,000, and there's, I think we have $77,000 that was left over from the last penny that we need to use by end of 2021, so we might as well use that money first and move forward. We started the beach walkovers, so those 4 excesses, we're tearing them out and putting new in. 7th and 8th Street is going to start the 1st of December. We had our pre-construction meeting last week, and we'll be sending a letter to the homeowners on those streets to let them know that there's going to be some construction there. The tennis courts out here will be closing right around the 1st of December. We're going to take the fence out, and then shortly after that, so they'll be down about 60 days, we're estimating. The audit has started. The stormwater bond validation, we've been past the 30-day period. There were no appeals. Chris talked to me last week. We're going to start working on the minimal loan that we have to buy those check valves. That was part of the validation requirement. So we'll be bringing that to you. The Park and Rec Board chairman, they're having a meeting on the 4th. She talked to me about having a tree lighting the same day as the council meeting on the 7th at 5 o'clock. And we'll just have some hot chocolate and cookies or something here. But does the council have any issue with that before the next council meeting? And I'll pass that on to them. They're having a meeting. We'll confirm that. And we've held up on the city news until after we talk to them and you tonight, because we would have sent it out already, but we're going to send it out after. If the council doesn't have any issue with that, then we'll go forward with tree lighting.
Is that the only day? I mean, the only reason I'm saying, I mean, it's nice that we're all here, but it's just nice to also, in a ceremony like that, to have the opportunity to say hello to the citizens, people who come out, spend a little time with them, and I feel that if we do this, we're going to be very much limited because we've got to come back in here. So, I mean, any other day probably than that, but it's...
Well, I'll ask them.
That's just my feeling. I mean, if everybody else is good with it, I'll be certainly there either way, but...
Yes, they were trying to do something simple. You know, they were concerned that they couldn't get the people out if they did it, but at least if there's a council meeting an hour before, you'd have some equal time and we'd do the lighting right at 5 o'clock with the big tree out front. So.
I think it's a good day. I mean, for me, it works well to be here just an hour early, but that would just be my input is that I think it coincides with you've got residents coming in, maybe you'll get a better turnout. I don't know. Just my thought. But ask her.
I would like to speak as well.
Go ahead.
I'm concerned about the city hosting anything like that. I mean, we just shut down the garage sale because of coronavirus and potential if somebody got sick, that they come out there, that type of deal. So I'd be concerned about having any type of event. The numbers haven't went down, and Councilmember Dr. Ocky has stressed her many times over people getting exposed and the dangers. So I don't think the city should open up to any other type of event until we get this other stuff under control and then ask the citizens what they want.
This was approved before, but it was approved before coronavirus, so I'm not going to say that that's binding on us. I mean, we can do what we want. We can have a special meeting before the next work session, have a quick vote on it if we want, but I think we would need their recommendation, Parks Board recommendation as to dates, alternatives. Again, I'm either way, it doesn't matter. We can do it before. I'm not going to not be there because it's 5 o'clock, that's fine. But Councilwoman Swope has a point that needs to be discussed, I think, with the council right now, so, but not today, but I think then, yes. So,
Well, my concern is if we aren't gonna have time to advertise it if we don't do it shortly. I mean, so,
you would do it in 2 weeks when's our work session?
16th?
16th?
It gives a 3-week notice.
Yeah.
That seems fair.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then we'll just hold the city news till that point,
Okay, fair enough.
after they have their meeting tomorrow.
Right, so they'll let us know.
Or
They'll
no,
let us-
Wednesday,
Okay.
excuse me. I told you about the bond validation, the code report Patty sent out, the code officer gave it to us today. And, I want to let everyone know, Bel Air Beach got another first. We're the first city to get our certificate of safety excellence from the Florida League of Cities. And I want to thank Patty and Kyle, they worked with the gentleman. And it was kind of nice to find out that we were the first city in Florida that even attempted to do that. So that's a good thing.
Congratulations.
I got that information.
Can you explain just for everyone here and for our benefit what that exactly means?
It's a safety initiative by the Florida League of Cities. They had some protocols that you had to follow, and they came in last Thursday, and did a walkthrough, checked off that we had policies in place and procedures and things of that nature. And they sent us an email today to tell us that we were the first city. That's another good thing. Little cities out there trying to participate in the Florida League. And we get about $1,500 in grant money back from them for safety things and safety gear for the staff. So we apply for that every year also. And what I have for the work session, I've got Forward Pinellas scheduled, okay? And that's been confirmed. It's for November 16th. Mayor, I heard you say you would like the sheriff's office here.
No, it doesn't look like that's going to be necessary based on what our citizen has said. So let's just hold that aside, and I'll let you know how things progress after
Okay.
Election Day.
We'll have a discussion on condo rentals. We'll look for, if you've got any changes or things you think we need to look at in the code, please let me know so we can adjust that charter. And we'll have that final in draft form for you. Condo rentals. Did I miss anything? If we're taking the sheriff off.
For now, he's off, yes.
Anything else? So we've got 1, 2, 3 items.
Glenn's item? Is that
Glenn's
Oh,
Glenn's
Glenn's.
item? Yes. And actually, I mean, if you watch the election results tomorrow, but if that passes for changing the charter with regard to Robert's Rules of Order, then a nice discussion from the council as to how they would like, what we'd like to do. Let's get the ideas out.
Well, we'll just put, Vice Mayor, is that okay? We'll just put this item and transfer it to the work session.
Yes.
Fine.
It'll be part of that. I think it's absolutely part of it.
Because you can change ordinances, so you can.
Unfortunately, we have the rules of order, so
Right.
that's the limiter for us.
Okay, so we've got 4 items
Yes.
right now.
What was the outcome of the anchored boats?
Oh, I talked to Clearwater about it. Clearwater does not do anything with anchored boats. It's Florida Fish and Wildlife. And part of their reason is they don't have any, what they call submerged lands that they own. And for the most part, all Florida Wildlife Commission does is if it becomes a derelict boat, then they will board it and then have sea tow it away. But the city of Clearwater doesn't do anything with it. I spoke to their harbor master and even the guy that does the Marina Cross, just to make sure they were both telling me the same story. Madeira Beach, I talked to them also, and they don't have a boat to do any enforcement. The sheriff does it for them, basically the same thing. If it's a derelict boat, they will go out there. But the way their ordinance reads, it's if you've got your boat anchored here, and the water shifts it to here, the hour time changes. because it's not in the same place. That's what they told me, the guy at the marina there. And he said, but it does take care of derelict boats. The boat you and I saw out here, that was reported to the sheriff. And at this point, nothing's been done about it, but it was reported actually prior to our trip. And for what I'm talking about, Councilmember Gaddis took me on a speedboat ride. I had my seatbelt on, no, I'm just kidding. But we spent, it was about 2.5, 3 hours. We went through the whole city, and I've got a lot of pictures, and I'm working on a map to try to, because you're looking at a house from behind, and you may not get the right house, so you gotta do some verification there. Because you don't want to walk up to somebody and say, hey, your dock's messed up, and they've got a beautiful dock out there. So I want to thank you for that, and that's greatly appreciated, and we'll move forward and keep doing that. And one last thing, the seawall on Bay Shore, they're actually working on it, and I'd say about 50 to 60% of the piles are in the ground. So, and hopefully that gets resolved with the owners and the buyer. There is a buyer, I don't know where it's at. So, that's all I have.
Can I just back to the boat thing, the boat question, and I kind of put that on this, the code review. That was one of my items, was to address those items. But don't we have the rights to, aren't we allowed to monitor the waterways 25 feet out or something, or what is that? I mean, it doesn't have to be our submerged land. If they're anchoring off, and I understand Clearwater doesn't do anything, it's clear because there are not only derelict boats, but half-sunk boats all up and down the causeway now, because I think St. Peter, someone, Madeira Beach, someone's chasing them out. So they're all,
Madeira.
yeah, they're all heading up this way. We have two right off the northern side of the causeway here that clearly they're not disposing of their waste properly. I think we've talked about this before. I know that in Key West, they are required to take their boat in and have it pumped out and have a pump out receipt, you know, every so often. There's a whole series of things they do to make sure those boats are no longer becoming derelict in Key West. And that's a good area to look at, because there's a lot. They have Sailboat Row down there where there's boat after boat after boat that's half sunk, and they've cleaned them out. So just FYI, that was one of my items on the code enforcement, and we need to talk about what our jurisdiction is and what we have the right to, you know, how far out can we go and impose a code if we have it in place.
Okay. Well noted. So, okay, that's all I have unless
I have
someone has
something for
something.
you, and it's pretty serious. I was approached Wednesday of last week by a citizen, and then I was approached by another citizen, and probably about 30 citizens, with regard to the 6th Street, 12th Street, 19th Street, and Morgan Street beaches. And apparently there has been maintenance, but it's beyond maintenance. It's been a mass cutting of the vegetation on the sand dunes. You and I had an email on it. I believe it was our city workers that did that. I think there's been over 100 complaints to Florida DEP at this point, is what I was told. And it's quite serious, apparently. It does not look as if a permit was obtained, and it looks as if improper vegetation was removed, which makes it potentially a very serious offense. I know they're very concerned about it. There's complaints. I have complained. There are other citizens that have complained, so much so that DEP has asked me to tell the city they got the message, it's under investigation. But I wanted to ask you what's happening here, because we have those things. I went out there on Sunday and I was in tears. They're just clear cut.
The 3 beach accesses, those have been trimmed long before I came here every year. They trim them, they clean. They aren't tearing any plants out. The root things are still there. They're just cutting the tops off, cleaning all the dead out, taking the trash, because they're basically trash catchers. And that's been done for many, many years. How long, I can't tell you. I can tell you that it was done before I came here, and it has continued. The state statute says if it's private or public owned land, which those are, that you can maintain them. Now, I will admit that the employees went a little too far, especially at 19th Street. 6th Street, they didn't go any further than the seawall. 12th Street, there may be a little encroachment, but not much. 19th Street, they got a little overzealous. Maybe they were tired or something, I'm not real sure. But we've discussed it, and we'll talk to DEP and explain that. I think people at first thought they were mangroves. Well, there's no mangroves growing on the ocean side because it's dry land. The mangroves grow over here unless there's somehow, along a rock barrier typically. So we will have that discussion with the county and DEP just to clarify, and they will come back like they do every year. They're not dead and they weren't destroyed. They're just so they're not. I know one person talked to me about it. They're tearing the plants out. Well, no, they're not. The plants are not torn out. And next spring they'll be growing back, and then somebody will come and say, "Are you going to clean the trash out, the sand spurs, and all this?" So that's what's been happening. If the state tells us not to do it anymore, we'll stop doing it.
I think the law that you're relying upon,
Pardon?
the law that you're relying upon is not necessarily correct. It says that, but that's for private property. There's
Public, it says.
Yeah, it goes with the construction control line, and the construction control line is laid right before most of those dunes. Most of those dunes are on the seaward side, and when it goes to the seaward side, a permit is going to be required. So this is where the investigation comes in with them. I can tell you, if it turns out that a permit was required and it wasn't obtained, we're in a heap of trouble as a city, okay? That's going to have to all be replanted, and they're not going to say it's going to come back. My understanding in speaking with them is that in lieu of criminal charges, in lieu of significant fines, there would be consent orders and replanting, and not replanting with seedlings, but replanting with mature plants. So I think it's significant, I think it's serious, and I looked at the control lines based upon the tax assessor stuff. They're going to use much, much more detailed maps and stuff, but it may not be as easy as what you just mentioned, and I'm not so sure that whatever legal advice you received in the past is correct. That's not private property. That's seaward of the construction control line. And you can see those lines if you drop the maps over. You can't go by a tax assessor's map because it's not to scale. They have the real stuff. But I think 19th, I think Morgan, clearly well over. You're right, I think 12th, there's a portion of it that got chipped. But I think it's one of those things that any portion of you can't even pick a CO, and the COs are obliterated at this point. So I got a lot of complaints. This DEP's got a lot of complaints. I'm just alerting you, alerting this city. We may have some problems, okay? And so let's be careful with what we have here, and please do not disturb that stuff until we get that ruling coming in here. It's very, very significant. Very significant.
Yeah, they're not doing anything else.
There's nothing left, but I just don't touch anything right now. I think until they get back with us. I think the initial word is there's a problem. So
can I just ask that have you called DEP, Lynn?
Today, you mean?
Have you spoken to DEP at all? Because I have to tell you, I know from doing beach cleanup, that is where most of the trash is, and trying to clean it out is very difficult. And, I'm constantly walking the beach and picking up trash, so that is a trash collector. I'm not saying that made it okay, but I do know there was a time there wasn't a CO on that beach, and you guys have done a wonderful job planning them, so thank you for keeping them and maintaining them. Because there have been, there was time we had nothing but sand, there was nothing out there. So, I find it curious that there are plenty of houses along Bel Air Shores that there's sea oats, and then behind a house, there's not a stitch of anything, someone's out there cleaning them out. That is not what we did. We did a little trimming, like cutting the grass sort of thing. So, I support you, and I just would say that, just get get someone from DEP to tell you it's okay, and, we just continue with whatever they say maintenance should be.
Yeah.
And don't I don't think we need to make a big deal out of it until we know for sure that it's a problem or not a problem.
Right.
It's a problem, and they'll be in contact with you pretty much, don't worry. I have spoken with them, and apparently about 100 other people. And apparently it's happened in Indian Rocks too, which is actually, so I'm not sure what's going on here, but they just said to the citizens that have wrote to them or spoke to them, thank you very much, it is being investigated, and the information will come out, and we'll get the reports, and then we're gonna have to act upon it, but just let's make sure we're on top of it and take care of whatever problems we're gonna have. I do think we have some rocky road to traverse here.
Can I
Okay, that's all I
ask
have.
a question right
Go ahead.
quick?
Yes, Dave. Sure.
Lynn, is there any possibility that maybe we could get some official training for the city's employees so that they know what to do? And it's not questionable, and that way no one could say, I didn't know anything.
Yeah, like I said, I looked at them this morning, and they went out a little too far on 19th Street. I'm not debating that. 6th and 12th, 6th they didn't go out anywhere past.
6 doesn't go
seawall.
past the seawall. Yeah.
Because it doesn't. 12th, there's a little hump, but not too much, probably a couple feet maybe. And I think we have to define, because, I have people that say, well, you can't cut sea oats. Well, yeah, you can cut sea oats as long as it's behind the erosion control line. In front of the erosion control line, you can cut them to 6 feet. Behind them, I can take them to the ground. Mangroves, a different story. I can cut them to 6 footer, but if they're 10 foot high, I can only take 25% off of them. So there's all kinds of nuances here, and we just need to, we'll talk to the environmental people of Pinellas County and DEP and figure out what we need to do or not. And, if they've got an issue, what they would do, in most cases, I would think, is they'll work with us to correct the problem, and if they tell us not to cut them anymore, then at some point in time, you might as well take the benches out, because you'll never see the ocean again. They'll just spray all over. And that's what probably the reason it was always trimmed. Because I've heard comments about that yes, we want you to trim them and clean out the garbage. I know the first year I was here, within a week, they were trimming them. And I recollect taking out, just at 6th Street, 4 or 5 trash bags full of garbage that were in the seaweeds. Because people just throw their trash in there.
What do they trim them with? How do they cut that stuff down? It's very thick, isn't it?
Well, I can tell you what we used. We used it's like a little chainsaw that you trim, but it's, it just shaves it off. I think what they used was, they probably used that, and looking at them, some of them, they probably used a weed eater.
They look like they're really, kind of, I don't know, mushed up, if you will. They're whacked from the top. So, Glenn, I know you have a question. Go ahead. Glenn Gunn was.
I'd like to speak, but it's my turn.
One second. Glenn Gunn is next, and then Rita Smoke. Okay, Glenn.
I was just going to ask, is this one of those instances where it's best for us to confess up and ask for the mea culpa rather than wait for them to pay us a visit with the 60 Minutes camera crew? And lay out hey, we messed up. We've instituted some training for our people. This is our get well plan, and maybe they kind of say
That's what you do.
Glenn, absolutely. Yeah, it's always better to beg forgiveness right now than to have them come after you, because it can be ugly, very ugly, like $15,000 a day ugly. So, yeah. Rita Swope.
Yes. Is there any way that we can get copies of the complaint so we can actually see what who complained and how many, and get a better grip on
Yeah,
what are?
you can make your public records request to the, make your public records request to Florida DEP.
Okay, okay.
Yep. Anything else for the city manager? Any questions from the city? Okay, city clerk?
No, nothing.
Nothing? City council comments, I don't know, what are the odd months here, November? It's an odd month. We start with Rita Swope.
I don't have any additional comments.
Thank you. Dave Gaddis.
Not really anything beyond what Lynn and I saw as we toured the seawalls. They're not as bad as we were led to believe. There are definitely some seawalls that need work, but it's not an epidemic in Bel Air.
Thank you for taking the tour. If you need the mayor to come out and confirm anything for a speedboat ride, that's fine too. Jody, Shirley, go ahead.
Just a couple of things when we were recognizing vets. There were several other vets in the room.
Yes.
Lynn, Rhonda Schwer was here. I don't know anyone else, just I know it's Veterans Day, November 11th, and thank you all for serving. Appreciate it. And that, and just thanks for coming out, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Jody. Rob Naki.
Quick question, when you did your speedboat ride, were you guys looking at docks too? Because I know there's a few messed up docks, and you guys made note of that? Okay, perfect.
We got a picture of yours.
There were
Mine's beautiful. If there's anything stuck under, it's from a dock nearby.
There were a few, but for the most part, the ones that I remembered being so bad, most of them have been taken out. There's still one or two stragglers. And then you've got some that are in pretty good shape, but maybe their rails are hanging a little bit, things like that. But mostly we focused on potential of debris falling into the water, which is way more of a hazard than a seawall issue is. So I would say we actually look pretty good compared to some.
Got a lot of pictures.
Did you see the one that I had talked to you about? That was
The
like 3 down for me? Okay. Just
tree's gone.
I was impressed. Yes, other than that, no comments, thank you.
Thank you, Robin. Glenn Benn?
3 issues. In the interest of best practices, I'm kind of stymied by the protocol for voting. Is a roll call required? What is a roll call required for?
Pretty much on any resolutions or pretty much anything other than like, you know, you want to take a break or you want to adjourn and stuff like that. But generally, when we have to get each person's vote on the record, we have to take a roll call vote. I think Patty knows the routine on that too. But pretty much anytime you're doing a resolution or an ordinance.
Well, I mean, those are specific examples of
Right.
when it is required, but my question is, do we take that to an extreme practice or not? I mean, seems like there's a lot of things we can do here administratively to say, all in favor, aye, opposed.
I have no problem if we get that blessing, we can do it. That might be something we have to take a look at on our ordinance. So I don't have it memorized, Glenn, but
Oh, okay.
I think there's a very definite, I think we have a very definite thing when we have to do it.
Yeah,
And it's
I
pretty
know,
much you got to do it on most
I
of
know
them.
resolutions, I know boards and committees, ballots, that sort of thing, but I think.
Okay, we can speed it up, there's no
we can
problem.
look at it.
Yep.
Lynn, can I add to that? It seems to me that whenever anything that normally we could just do and everyone, if it's something that someone is passionate about, they seem to want a record.
I have no objection against that. Sure. Another thing, best practice, we're again tasking the planning and zoning board. I think we, as a council, we've all seen the benefits from a budget and finance committee, code review committee, communications committee, and the list goes on, and we're about to task the planning and zoning board for a second time. I want to plant a seed, and maybe it's time to create a standing advisory committee for the council. The authority to do it is in section 6.01, paragraph B, and it can be done by ordinance for a long-term standing one or a resolution for a temporary one. But create a standing advisory board or a committee for the council, and also for the benefit of the city staff and city manager, that we can task from time to time on issues on demand, 5 to 7 members, various backgrounds, 2 to 3 years, we can get rid of a lot of the redundancy. We start advertising for people, we have a selection process, then we have an orientation, and then you go through all the normal dynamics of team building and that sort of thing. And maybe if we had 5 or 7 people that on demand, hey, we need your help and advice and consent and recommendations on this, maybe it's time to do that, you know. I'm gonna throw myself in the blaze and say I'll work with the city manager on developing a straw man concept there, just like the draft.
It's an interesting idea, so yes, please, if you would.
And lastly, I raised the issue about the process for the reappointment of those planning and zoning board members. Again, we're going to take a look at it, but I would like to see perhaps a process where word gets out a little bit more. I think we've seen a little more interest from the residents and boards and committees. And my fear is that when these are coming up, well, it's just kind of word of mouth, they're already interested, yeah, okay, so it's a reappointment, rather than put the word out there saying we're looking for more people who are genuinely interested. I'm looking for motivation, innovative thought. I have a fear that some of these things have been around for so long, they're getting stagnant, so that's the only reason I raised the issue here. That's it, that's all I have.
Thank you. Glenn, if you don't mind, I'm going to second that. I'll come back to you. We're past city attorney, but do you have something you want to add before?
Yes, sir.
Go ahead.
Section 2.07D of the city charter says voting on ordinances and resolutions shall be by roll call and recorded by the city clerk in the official minutes of the meeting.
I knew I saw it. Yeah, so again, if we get, I'm telling you how to vote tomorrow, but if you give us that latitude, your point can be addressed by us. So I'm going to echo your point here. I think that, let's try and follow our best practices. The advisory committee is not a bad idea, and I think it's something that, let's get it out there and get that, get a discussion here. But to have a standing committee when these quick things come up that we need to be tasking someone, we don't have to sit here and, spend a lot of time with it too, because we're doing quite a bit, so I think it's a good idea. I don't have a lot for us. When I acknowledged the veterans, it wasn't to single out 2, I just happened to see them in the audience and I asked them to do it, but I know Lynn Reeves and Glenn Gunn, Wanda Schwer, and anyone else, again, anyone who served, and I said it before, anyone who has served in the past and no longer with us, is to honor every veteran, okay? That's why this country is where it is. We fought some horrendous wars, and they're the ones who were on the front line for us, so thank you from Bel Air Beach. I wish we had a way of doing a ceremony in our city, but we're going to just thank you, okay? Tomorrow, well, before I do that, Leslie Natero asked me regarding John, I put my glasses away over here, Jim Corrigan. This Thursday is a service for Mr. Corrigan. It is at the Hubble Funeral Home, is that it?
It's just a visitation.
Visitation. And you know what time it starts?
It's 4 to 6.
4 to 6, okay, so 4 to 6 at the Hubble Funeral Home, the one here on Indian Rocks Road, right?
Yes.
Okay, so if anyone would like to attend that to honor him, that would be nice. Okay, that would be great. And lastly, I think it's been said by Mr. Hanzig, and I'm going to echo it. Tomorrow is Election Day. We have a lot of stuff that affects our city that's on the ballot. We have a lot of stuff that affects our country. So please get out there and study it and vote, and may we all be better for it. I thank everyone who came out tonight. It's nice to do this in person. It's been a long time, so thank you all for coming out and taking interest in your state and your government here. With that, I will ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
And a second? All in favor? Now, Glenn, we're not going to do a roll call. All in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? There's never been somebody who opposed it. Have a good night, everyone. Enjoy. Thanks.